So, with a brief understanding of the importance of population data, we now switch our attention to the economic policy that deals with population. Now, from the perspective of pure economic management, population is equivalent to human resource, right? Now, because population must settle on the land and make their living from the land, one of the main areas of economic management is the relation between population and land. So this will be our focus. Well, first, we'll examine this area from two angles. First of all, we look at the principle of government population management of ancient China, and then we'll look at migration flow and land utility. Okay? All right, so now the first principle of population management is that the settlement of people must be made according to the natural environment. For example, the job of the Minister of Works entails an accurate measure of land size, also description of natural resources, environment and climate of the local area. Okay, so that is the government work during the ancient times. Now, the second principle of population management is that population density must agree with the total size of the land. So this process is basically city planning. The chapter of the Royal Regulation in the Book of Rights records that land size is first measured for the formation of towns. And then there is detailed planning of where to allocate residential areas. Now, the aim of this operation has two purposes. Okay, first of all grounds must be put into proper use and not wasted. But this does not mean that there has to be man-made buildings everywhere. Apparently, open space is also part of the plan. But the point of the Royal Regulation is that city planning should be thorough and take all areas into account. Only this way, land utility can be high and efficient. So that's the first purpose. Now, the second purpose, according to Confucius, a good city planning should create such a society where everybody has something to do. Now, as ideal as it may sound, what this really means is that people should not be made bored with their life. Now, this notion should be quite familiar with modern people, and I think this happens a lot, even in the most stimulative era, if you like. I mean, these days, right, with so much to occupy us every day, a boredom should be a relic of a bygone age, if you like. An age without internet, without social media. What else? Multi-channel TV, 24-hour shopping, multiplex cinemas, game consoles, texting, whatever other mirrored possibility are available these days to entertain us. But despite the plethora of high-intensity entertainment constantly at our disposal, we are still bored. Up to half of us are often bored at home or at school, while more than 2/3 of us are chronically bored at work. And we're bored at the paperwork, by the commute, and by dull meetings. TV is boring, and other social media. Now, we spend our weekends at dull parties, watching tedious films and listening to our, people around us, talking about their day. Well, I'm sure, even in ancient times, there are always ways for people to get bored as well. So a good city planning must take into account of human development and make sure that they're not only work opportunity for people, but also functions where people receive proper education, training, and more importantly, harness their spiritual fulfillment. So put it differently, a city or any populated region should not be a place where people live at the expense of their mental health. In contrast, the expansion of a modern city faces the problem of overpopulation, pollution, and congestion. So it's quite often the case that the planning has failed to follow the second principle that we just mentioned. Now, if you put these two principles together, we can see that the government is first responsible for to conduct field work, right, to understand the geographical feature of the area, and then based on that knowledge, it should carefully design the living space in order to harness social harmony and human development. Now, although the technicality is very similar to today's government Department of Housing and Urban Development, the philosophy, again, in the ancient times, is much more geared towards the human development, I would say. In the chapter of royal regulation, it is clear that it is the responsibility of the government to distribute people in accordance with the natural environment. Now, this is not to say that people are forced to relocate home, even when they do not want to. Although the government may simply follow what the people want, it must take very active measures to do that. Now, the other side of the coin is that the government distribution of population must be harmonious with the people themselves. For example, people who are raised in the, let's say, the inland must be very different from those raised by the seaside, right? Not only are they different in customs, but also in personality, view of life, perhaps, and the food consumption, etc. Therefore, the government must ask question, what is in the best interest of the people, right? And not to force them to adapt to the environment. The chapter of evolution of rights summarized this as follows. It says, the sage kings show their sense of the state of harmony in the following way. They did not make the occupants of the hills remove and live by the streams, nor the occupants of the inlands remove and live in the plains, and thus the people complained of no hardship. So, according to this ancient text, a proper distribution of population is only achieved through a thorough understanding of local environment as well as people's custom and interest. If people of the sea area are forced to live in the mountain, they will have to change their occupation, right? If they lose their occupation because of difficulty to adapt, they will have hardship. So if they have hardship and become poor, they will likely give way to unbridled license. So the harmony between people and the local environment in distribution of population is indeed the key. Now, I know some of you may have a question in mind. I don't think that people living by the sea is very different from people living in the inland. They do the same thing. Well, now we must examine this modern implication, right, of the ancient teaching on the distribution of population. The modern world is surely different from ancient times in that people have high mobility thanks to modern transportation. So if people want to relocate to a different location, no matter how far it is, in theory they can do it quite easily by themselves. And also people have full access to the geographical information on the local area and make a decision based on their preference. In addition, modern technology seems to have largely eliminated the distributing nature of relocation on people's custom, right? For example, a person from Swansea living in Scotland may easily buy a Welsh rarebit online and never have to worry about losing their favorite home food. There are also, as you know, ethnic districts in many cities, and people can find whatever they need to continue their way of life in a very different country or region. So it seems that the custom is no longer an issue in population distribution, and the relevance of the ancient teaching has diminished. But population movement is a relative concept. You see, the people can move to a different location, but the location can also move to the people. And what we mean by that is new city and town development and construction. Development and construction will inevitably have an impact on person's way of life, right? For example, do you think it is appropriate to build a 50-floor high-rise commercial building in a small-sized historic town where residents have enjoyed generations of quiet country life? Probably not. But why not? Well, the building is one thing, but what comes with it is, high traffic flow, pollution, damage to local culture, etc. The cost of all of this is beyond material and labor, and it simply, doesn't fit people's way of life. Therefore, it is equivalent. If you do that, then it is equivalent to forcing people to live in an unfit environment where they don't find their position. It's the same thing. So the concept of harmony between people's way of life and the environment is still, I would say, very much relevant. It really doesn't matter if it's the case where, government relocated people to a new region to establish new life, or where, development takes place in the local region where people have lived for generations. The principle of distribution of population still applies. Sometimes, if not most of the time, the decision of property investment is based only on a series of quantitative variables, such as material cost, financing cost, construction length, taxes, sales price, and overhead costs, etc. And if the net present value of the project is positive and large enough, then it's a green light. So anyone with a bit of a finance knowledge is able to apply, a simple discount cash flow model and arrive at a decision fairly quickly. But if we look at some major cities around the globe, citizens are under enormous life pressure, and not only just the cost of living, but also pressure from the environment. I mean, sometimes, when I visit certain cities and observe people's living condition, I just wonder, how can people live in a box like that, like a pigeonhole? The street is smelly, the traffic is absolutely horrible, but the buildings are still being built. So the problem is, human development is not in the equation of our decision making. So the loss of social harmony is therefore not counted as the cost in our model. But if we examine the teaching of Confucius, it's quite clear that human development is a fundamental driver of property and urban development. And the deep meaning of social harmony is beyond physical environment. It is about people's mindset. So a good urban design will involve moral education. And this can be realized through a more humane living environment and more education opportunity, and not just about the high-tech buildings and commercial activities. We cannot emphasize this enough, that urban and town development should be in line with human development and the harness of harmony. However, because it is economically difficult, for the private sector to consider the wider harmony impact of real estate project, it is the responsibility of the government to make very detailed plan and regulation.